Hello and a very warm welcome to Malhotra IAS. As you all know, this is a new series that is aimed to cover up the weekly current affairs. We are going to come up with every day one subject current affairs of that week, and we are going to cover it in very detailed and in a comprehensive way, right? And a very warm welcome to Malhotra IAS. My name is Madhusudan Reddy and I will be taking up the current affairs for the weekly for geography, environment and science and tech. Right, and I can see around 18 to 20 odd students are live here, and Priyanka, a good noon, right? Bharadwaj, good noon. Harikishan, good noon. So let's begin with today's session. Today we will be taking up the IPCC, which is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has come up with the 6th assessment report. In this report, it has said about various aspects, especially with respect to climate change and those which are ancillary effects of climate change in the future, however climate is going to impact the individuals and a country as a whole, right. Firstly, see, these are the news articles which were present. The first news article in the Hindu newspaper, it said that IPCC warns of multiple climate hazards. When you look into the Indian Express newspaper also, there is a similar kind of news article which talks about IPCC alarm bells climate change effect worse than earlier estimates. Now there is an also other article, heat, humidity, sea rise to make India uninhabitable if emissions not cut. IPCC report warns of malaria outbreak in Himalayan region. See, firstly let us try to understand what exactly is an IPCC, what exactly is the IPCC as a body does, and how the genesis of this body has taken place, right. So let us quickly look into this. Here IPCC means it is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is the intergovernmental panel. Intergovernmental panel means it consists of various governments wherein a panel has been formed, and this panel is a United Nations body. See, this panel is an United Nations body. It is not a United Nations organ. There is a difference between panel and an organ, like body and organ. A body generally has certain roles and responsibilities to do. Most of the bodies, they do have recommendatory policies, but organs, they work on a larger scale. Bodies, they generally give recommendatory aspects, right. One such body is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is the United Nations body for assessing the science related to climate change, right. Firstly, let us try to look into the syllabus, where exactly this component will fall into the syllabus of UPSC, right. If you look into the preliminary examination, in the preliminary examination you generally see a syllabus called general issues. See, general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity and climate change. And from the mains perspective, in the paper general studies 3, paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, environmental impact and assessment. This is where the IPCC as a component which gave its 6th report, the 6th report studies will fall into, right. Now if I ask you a question and I want this session to be very interactive, please make sure that you reply whenever I ask you a question so that we can understand things in a better way, right. So if I ask you, IPCC as a body does its own research, or it gets research from various aspects and various societies and then gives a report, can you answer it? Does it make its own research, or it borrows research from various aspects and compiles a report and then give? See, in general, IPCC does not have its own research body on terms of climate change. It actually compiles all the reports from various parts of the world, and this intergovernmental body has members, those members even from India also, there are scientists present in this body. They contribute to this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and this panel will compile all the research across the world and make up a 1000 odd pages report, and based on that report, various other government bodies, international organizations, they debate and they come to a conclusion. One such consensus and conclusions were your Paris 2015 conference. In the Paris 2015 conference, we have come to a conclusion that our earth as a body is going to heat, and if we don't stop this heating, our climate change will impact the regular life, the day-to-day life, right. So look here, this is the images which I have directly taken from the website of the IPCC itself. It says that IPCC was created to provide policymakers with regular scientific assessments on climate change, its implications and potential future risks, as well as to put forward adaptation and mitigation options. See, most of the questions, they do directly come from the website itself. So that's the reason why I've taken directly the picture from the website. See, IPCC, first point, from the preliminary examination point of view, they do not make its own research, it borrows research. It borrows research from various countries, and it has been formed, if you look into the genesis of this IPCC body, it has been formed with the WMO, World Meteorological Organization, and with the United Nations Environment Program in the year 1988, right? It is created by the United Nations Environment Program and World Meteorological Organizations, and it has 195 odd members. All these 195 odd members are nothing but your United Nations memberships. Whoever has membership in the United Nations, they are by default members of the IPCC as well. They can contribute their research stating that this climate can get heated and it cannot get heated. There are also scientific researchers which are also told that the climate change in climate is not a big threat, but there are equal researches which have been given that climate as a component keeps on changing, and if we don't adapt to that and take mitigation actions, then it shall be a problem in the future. So this IPCC as a body has 3 working groups, and 3 working groups are they does have different roles and responsibilities. So first working group, if you look into the picture here, you can see some ice caps, right? The first working group majorly works on assessing the physical scientific basis of climate system and climate change. It means that they are in the first working group, that means there are set of countries which works on this, or set of bodies that come together, sit together and decide that in this working group, what is the scientific basis on which our climate has been changing. So the major scientific basis, they have come to a conclusion that our earth temperature is rising, and because of this rising in the temperature, there shall be a thermal expansion of the water. So if I ask you a question, agar temperature rise hua, so evaporation will be more, there will also be rainfall more, and at the same time melting of glaciers will take place, but the same melting of the glaciers, they come and join the oceans, evaporation bhi zyada ho raha hai, barish bhi zyada ho raha hai, then why does the sea level rise? Why? See, sea level rises because of the concept called thermal expansion. If you heat anything, it will expand. Likewise, the water, if they get heated by 2 degrees Celsius, they expand to rise by almost a meter, right? That is the biggest threat this scientific working group has said us. And the second working group, which works on the assessments of the vulnerability of socio-economic and natural system to climate change and negative and positive effects of the climate change. See, the 6th assessment report yesterday, especially on Monday, what we got is the second part of the report. The first part of the report was already given earlier in the month of 2 months before, and the third part of the report is going to come in the month of April. The second part of the report of the IPCC which we got is basically tells that what is the impact of climate change on individuals, especially in the coming years. For the first time, this report has included socio-economic components, and at the same time it has also taken into health considerations. It has gone into micro level, giving researchers stating that which city is going to be impacted more and which city is going to be impacted less. And it has given certain data, cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Coimbatore, Chennai, and it has also given basing on the wet bulb temperature. We will be trying to understand what exactly is the wet bulb temperature in the coming 5 minutes, but for now let us stick to the working group 2. The working group 2 tells that it assesses the vulnerability of socio-economic and natural system to climate change, negative and positive effects. The third working group, that means the third set of group, the report which is going to come in the month of April, which will be talking about what should be done in the future. It said that in the second report, it is said that these are the problems which we are going to face, but at the same time IPCC also gives certain kinds of solutions. It tells about adaptation methodologies and mitigation strategies. If we tend to adapt to that, it is said that the impact of climate change in the coming years can be controlled, right? The third working group, it works on the assessment options of mitigating climate change and through limiting or preventing greenhouse gas emissions. Look, the image I have taken it from the IPCC website itself. This is the third working group. Look back, you get to see some kind of windmills, right? It is an indication that if you go for some non-conventional sources of energy, clean energy and green energy, you can actually combat climate change. Look at the second working group background. It has shown that these are the cities and cities can get affected. There is vulnerability that can be happening. And the first working group, it talks about the scientific evidences and especially the reasons behind why the climate is changing. Based on these reports, especially in the year 2015, our Paris Climate Agreement also, we have come to a conclusion that 2 degrees Celsius temperature is going to be risen by the end of this century, right? Based on the assessments and conclusions, we have come up with the NAPCCC, that is National Action Plan for Climate Change Combatification, right? Those things are most important for your mains examination. See, now we will be talking about the report itself, the 6th assessment report. In this there are 3 reports. In this there are 3 parts. First part, which was already out, the scientific evidences which we have given, right? And the second part, it is now out. Yesterday it is out. We are going to deal with this particular report. In this report, it states that for the first time, it made an assessment on the basis of regional as well as sectoral impacts of the climate change. Now, what is regional and sectoral impacts? It is nothing but now the IPCC has taken into consideration area wise spatial studies they have done. They have done, for example, city as a Mumbai or city as a Chennai, what this city is going to face in terms of climate change, what Mumbai as a city is going to face as a climate change, what are the threats it is going to face. This sector wise they have tried to give the report. Now, such granular information has never been given in the previous reports, right? It is for the first time preliminary examination में पूछने का scope होता है, right? And it is also said that vector-borne diseases as well as your waterborne diseases will be increased in the coming years as and when the climate change happens, especially increase in temperature. How does change in climate, especially increase in temperature, will lead to vector-borne disease and waterborne disease? Can you try to comprehend or can you try to analyze how increase in temperature is going to increase vector-borne diseases and waterborne diseases? Can you please comment down? Let me wait for the comments. Okay. See, the United Nations General Secretary has said that, oh, okay, I have seen comments coming in. It is said that more rainfall. Anil Agarwal says, if there is more rainfall, then what? Vector-borne diseases. See, vector-borne diseases are nothing but your malaria and other diseases which are caused by the vectors. Dengue, malaria, right? So, living conditions problem हो सकता है. And Aarti says that favorable temperature for growth of mosquitoes, high humidity provides condition for more virus etc. to develop. Yes, you guys are commenting it rightly, but more exactly we will be learning them in a couple of minutes, coming couple of minutes, right? See, before that, let us quickly look into the facts and the impact of this report, what exactly it is saying, the report is saying. It is said that the United Nations General Assembly Secretary said that this report is atlas of human suffering. The report is an indication that it is an atlas of human suffering, and at the same time 40% of the total world's population are highly vulnerable to the climate change. And if the rise in temperature is kept below 1.5 degrees Celsius, even then it would be projected that there can be sizable impact that can happen to the globe as a whole, right? By the middle of the century, around 35 million people in India could face annual coastal flooding, with 45 to 50 million at risk by the end of the century. See, now let us try to understand them in a sectoral wise, right? See, this report has mentioned 3 cities in India, especially the Mumbai, Ahmedabad and Chennai. They have given detailed studies about those cities also. It is said that Mumbai as a city is going to face severe flooding in the coming years, and Ahmedabad as a city is going to face intense urban heating. See, urban heats and Mumbai mein floods, they are very common, but what is this report telling in specific? It is saying that the rate at which this flooding situation and the rate at which the heating is going to be very fast. And for Chennai, it has given an assessment stating that in the coming years, by the year 2050 and 2100, if proper measures are not being taken, proper measures are not being put into place, then the city, especially Chennai, is going to face a combination of heat plus humidity, right? Heat and humidity, which is a deadly combination. When there is intense heat and there is too much of humidity, your body cannot sweat anymore. When your body cannot sweat anymore, there is chances of heart strokes for an individual, there is chances of you fainting. So on an average, there are around 50 to 60 odd days of, in India, somewhere, most of the cities in India has 50 to 60 odd days wherein high heat and high humidity will be there. You have learnt in the concept, you might come across a concept called October heat. In the month of October, you get to see so much of heat and you generally sweat a lot in the areas of the northern belt. Come to south little more in Chennai and north of Chennai, you get to see so much of heat in the months of October, and November there is rainfall coming from the northeast monsoons, right? All this combination might be impacted in the future, and the regular phenomena of monsoons can also be impacted, right? And this report also specifically mentioned that including Chennai, Bhubaneswar, Patna and Lucknow, dangerous levels of heat and humidity are going to be impacted. And let us try to look into the economic impacts of the climate change as per the report of the IPCC. In the economic impact, it is said that especially the crops, there is 9% reduction in the production of the crops because of the rise in temperature. When a crop do not have particular temperature, conducive temperature, it will drop its productivity. When there is a drop in the productivity, you get to see food security being hampered, right? It specifically talked about wheat and pulses, courses and cereal yields which could fall by 9%. And secondly, damage from the sea level rise in Mumbai could rise up to, the sea level rise in Mumbai could actually impact 162 billion by the year 2050. And what is the economy of India? Can anyone comment? In India, the highest share of any municipal corporation or any municipal corporation body comes from the Mumbai Municipal Corporation itself. Around 10,000 crores or somewhere 12 to 13,000 crores of money, the budget of the municipal corporation itself, which is more than the budget of the northeastern countries. So that is the biggest budget a municipal corporation can put forward. If those kind of cities are being impacted, they can have a spillover effect on the nearby satellite towns as well, right? And secondly, direct damage is estimated at $24 billion, and if it is taken, control the temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius. If direct damage, if you take into consideration the damage by, if we do not control, it will lead to $36 billion. This $36 billion is a huge money, very huge money, right? And the social impact, in terms of social impact, if there is too much of change in the environment, people who are residing in the deserts, they can no longer reside in the deserts. Coastal peoples, countries like Maldives और coastal cities, they have to move from place to place, migration करना पड़ता है. इनको कहा जाता है environmental migration. Environmental migration will take place, and environmental migration के कारण environmental violences comes into picture. This report has specifically talked about the environmental migration and especially creating ecological refugees. Ecological refugees means those people who have moved from place to place and migrated because of the environment, right? And it also talks about spread of diseases. That means change in climatic conditions will ease the spread of mosquito-borne dengue fever to billions more by the end of this century. See, as I can see that Sama has commented here that there will be tropical and temperates which are favorable for these kind of infections. So shifting of species will take place. There is an imbalance in the ecological processes that will be taking place in and around the tropical regions. Now what is the shifting of the species? species tend to shift from one place to another place. Imagine, see, if this is your globe, those species which are confined to the tropics, because of the intense heat, these species are generally habitable in one set of environment. If there is extreme heat, what they do? They move towards north to bear the heat. Likewise, the shifting of species also takes place, and those species which are living in the lower regions will now tend to move to the higher regions. The ecological impact, same like your human beings also, they tend to start to use more number of ACs, more greenhouse gases will be produced, and ecological cooling through natural processes will no longer be possible. So this is what it says. Look here, the diseases that have been specifically mentioned with respect to the rise in temperature is your circulatory, respiratory, diabetic and infectious diseases. Infant mortality might also rise. So what is the relation between the rise in temperature? Circulatory, that means respiratory, breathing. Circulatory means your heart diseases. How? See, this you will get to understand when you learn the wet bulb concept that we will be learning now, right? So these are some of the kind of impacts which is social, economical as well as ecological. In terms of ecological aspects, there is another important component which the report talked about is the coral reefs. When there are coral reefs, the coral reefs are the worst affected species. If coral reefs are affected, they are also called the rainforests of the entire oceans. They are the primary food producers and primary food consumers as well. If they are impacted, that means the entire ocean ecosystem gets impacted, right? See, now let us try to understand the concept of wet bulb and the heat bulb. Wet bulb, for example, if I ask you what is the temperature of this room or what is the temperature of the room in which you are sitting, you might be calculating it as you open your Google, you get to know that the temperature of this room is somewhere around 15 degrees Celsius or 16 degrees Celsius. But how is that temperature calculated? The temperature is calculated on the basis of your heat bulb concept. There is also a concept called wet bulb. Wet bulb means, for example, you take up the thermometer. If this is your normal thermometer, you have a bulb here, that is your mercury bulb, right? Now tie a cloth around it and measure the temperature. The temperature of that will be less than the heat bulb temperature. So global climate change phenomena is now asking to measure the temperature not on the basis of your heat bulb but also on the basis of your wet bulb. Why should one measure the temperature on the basis of the wet bulb? Because wet bulb temperature takes into considerations of your heat and humidity, right? Now firstly let us try to look into the definition of the wet bulb. Wet bulb temperature is the lowest temperature to which air can be cooled by the evaporation of water into the air. I will be rereading this definition. Wet bulb is the temperature at which the lowest temperature to which air can be cooled by the evaporation of water into the air. See, the lowest temperature which it can reach by the process of evaporation into the air, the water being evaporated into the air. Imagine, suppose you are in a 15 degrees Celsius room. If you increase the humidity in that room, though the room temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, but the conditions in which you are living feels like as if you are at 20 degrees Celsius. Suppose if there is in the months of summer, somewhere there is around 40 degrees Celsius, a city is experiencing 40 degrees Celsius. Now add the component of humidity to it. If there is more humidity, you feel suffocated, you cannot sweat anymore. When you cannot sweat anymore, there will be uneasiness. When this uneasiness is there, what happens is that an individual can now get heart strokes, brain strokes as well as respiratory diseases and other diseases which we have been mentioning here. See, these are the diseases that have been mentioned in this report, specifically considering the India as a whole. It talked about circulatory diseases, respiratory, diabetic, infectious diseases and infant mortality rate. infant mortality rate because kids cannot survive in this kind of humidity temperatures, right? This will lead to the ecological imbalance. Clear? Now, there is some kind of factual data that has been given here. Theoretically, it is said that if the wet bulb temperatures, the average wet bulb temperature is around 31 degrees Celsius in the months of loo time as well as heat and humidity composition time per. If this wet bulb temperature reaches to somewhere around 35 degrees Celsius, then the individuals like you and me cannot sustain the heat. That is when the various respiratory diseases and circulatory diseases are seen, right? Especially the regions like the northern belt in the months of summer and in the months of October. These are the places where the wet bulb temperature will sometime is expected to reach 35 degrees Celsius, right? 35 degrees Celsius of wet bulb temperature is considered to be very, very dangerous. Even a healthy individual or healthy adult cannot survive in this temperature with a physical activity. Means if a person, imagine a healthy person who is going and doing a construction labor, they cannot work for more than 6 hours because 6 hours से ज़्यादा अगर कुछ काम किया गया, that means they might be experiencing some kind of strokes or heat waves or heat related diseases, right? So let's see the technical aspects which have been given in this report. It is said that wet bulb temperature is a measure that combines heat and humidity, right? Wet bulb takes into consideration heat and humidity. Now, what does dry bulb or hot bulb take into consideration? It takes into consideration only heat. It will not take into consideration the humidity. When humidity is taken into consideration, that is called wet bulb temperature, right? Wet bulb temperature. There can be a possibility of these kind of questions being asked in your prelims examination, right? Please make sure you are clear with the definition here. A wet bulb temperature of 31 degrees Celsius is extremely dangerous for human beings, and these kind of temperatures are generally seen in the Rajasthan belt and in the northern belt, especially in terms of summer seasons. So a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees is unsurvivable for more than 6 hours even for fit and healthy adults, as I have told you, right? Just a minute. Okay, now based on the composition of heat and humidity, there is an index that is calculated, and that index is called heat index, right? Heat index means it takes into consideration humidity plus heat. When heat and humidity, heat is the average temperature of that particular region, and humidity is average humidity in that region will be taken, and an index that will be formed, and based on in this index the city has to undergo certain kinds of measures, right? Now, especially in the year July 2003, there have been areas where the wet bulb temperature has reached 35 degrees Celsius. So based on this research that they have taken into consideration, the IPCC has said that in India too there can be cities that can reach this kind of temperature, right? Especially Saudi Arabia, Dhahran is the place where in the year 2003 there has been a wet bulb temperature that has reached up to 35 degrees Celsius. But what is the dry bulb temperature there? The dry bulb temperature there was only 42 degrees Celsius. In India, Rajasthan, you can get to see 48 degrees Celsius. Even if you go into the interiors of India, in the central Madhya Pradesh also, you get to see somewhere around temperatures of 47, 48. 47, 48, it doesn't mean that your wet bulb temperature will be more than 35 degrees Celsius. No. Along with this kind of temperatures, when you have rise in the humidity levels, the wet bulb temperature will be somewhere around 35. If more than this 35 degrees Celsius के ऊपर अगर कोई temperature जा रहा है, that to wet bulb, taking into consideration heat and humidity, that is very dangerous for human beings. And it is said that by the end of 2030, there can be couple of cities in India that can see this wet bulb temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius in the at least for 20 to 30 odd days, right? Now in those 20 to 30 odd days, imagine the men or the woman who is going to work as a labor, they can no longer work for more than 6 hours. So the productivity of individuals will be dropped. When this productivity of individuals is dropped, then outcome, GDP, economy, all things are cascading. So one will have an impact on other. Similarly, it will lead to the disbalance in terms of ecology as well as economy and environment, right? See, at present the wet bulb temperatures in India rarely exceed 31 degrees Celsius, with most of the country experiencing maximum wet bulb temperatures of only 25 to 30 degrees Celsius according to IPCC, right? Now emissions, if you cut down the emissions, and that too keeping them in the limit as agreed by the National Action Plan on Climate Change, which we have agreed in the Paris Agreement in the year 2015, right? Even if we tend to achieve the net carbon zero emissions of 2070, still we are not being in a position to control the wet bulb temperatures to not to reach more than 31 degrees Celsius, right? फिर भी we are not in a position to control the wet bulb temperatures in 31 degrees Celsius, right? That is one of the threat which the IPCC has reported. Let us take the example of India itself. In India, the report has clearly mentioned that India itself, there are cities and states where the wet bulb temperature can reach 31 degrees Celsius and 35 degrees Celsius too. So that report said that on an average India देखा गया तो 12 to 66 days of hot, which is heat and humid combinations are there. There are places in India where there is extreme heat and extreme humidity for 66 days, somewhere between 12 to 66 days of heat plus humidity will be there. Now if we do not control the rising temperatures, then India, especially on the east coast, the Sundarban belt, Paradeep, Visakhapatnam and Chennai, these cities might see an increase in threefold days of heat plus humidity. So threefold, which is almost equal to 35 to 200 days. If there are 200 days of heat and humidity days with a wet bulb temperatures more than 31 degrees Celsius, that means the city's efficiency will fall down economically, ecologically and in all terms. And it is also said that there are 25 odd cities which are very hot already, extreme heat temperatures that are being present. Along with that, as I have already gave you an example, the Middle Eastern countries, they are already experiencing more than 35 degrees Celsius of heat and humidity with wet bulb temperatures of more than 6 hours a day, right? And that too in the year 2071 to 2000, that means in the next coming 50 odd years, you get to see the entire Middle East going into wet bulb temperatures of more than 35 degrees Celsius, right? Look here, it is said that Chennai का example दिया गया. In Chennai, heat and humidity combinations in the year 2050, it is estimated that around 237 days out of 365 days, 237 days is a very big number. And in the year 2000, 309 days of wet bulb temperatures can rise. That means this city is no longer sustainable, this city is no longer livable, because अगर 300 odd days के लिए if you have wet bulb temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius, then it is generally considered that it is no longer a livable city. Chennai can be one such potential city. Now if I ask you what are the solutions that can be taken with the help of this IPCC report, though the report will come up in the next one odd month, but like you can actually take in certain kinds of solutions which you have already known, which you have already studied, right? One such solutions are at the international level. If you have to go for adaptative measures, bring in mitigative measures, as well as global climate finance को strengthen किया जाए and meet the nationally determined contributions which every country has promised, which are intended nationally determined contributions. Means every country in the year 2015 has come up and said that these are the things which we are going to do so that we are going to fight the climate change. If those things are completely met, then there can be some kind of solutions which you can see. And at the national level, particularly India, you have a program called National Action Plan on Climate Change, which includes 8 programs, 8 principles on which India is working upon, like solar, renewable energy. Those things need to be strengthened. Renewable energy के लिए push देना चाहिए. And community level पे, like people like you and me, you have to create more awareness. Do not waste food, do not waste water, do not waste the resources, use judiciously. Those are the kinds of things which you can put forward. You can also check, and at the individual level you can actually check the individual footprint. And afforestation, community management of forests, these are some things one can take into consideration. See, there are certain lines I could not avoid to include in this slide, though they are lengthy. I want you to read, because this is where the questions can come from, right? I'll be taking a minute time. If it is visible to you, please take it and read it. See, it is said that hot extremes including heat waves have intensified in cities where they have also aggravated air pollution events and limited functioning of key infrastructure. Extreme events can lead to air pollution. How is this climate change increasing the pollution of air? It can lead to forest fires. It can lead to more consumption of your ACs as well as other cooling agents, which will indirectly increase the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, right? Now, global heat and humidity will create conditions beyond human tolerance if emissions are not rapidly eliminated. India is among the places where this will experience the intense heat. India सबसे ज़्यादा जो नुकसान होगा वो इंडिया और चाइना के लिए होगा. क्यों? As compared to China, India and Bangladesh and Pakistan, these are the countries which are going to be experiencing extreme events. How? Because on the globe, we are in the tropics, especially we face the plight of malarial diseases, vector-borne diseases, waterborne diseases. Along with that, the density of population is so huge. Any small change in the climate, it is we, India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, along with some parts of China, that the climate change is going to impact in terms of all social, economic and political aspects, right? There can be political changes also which you can witness. Now, hot extreme including that heat waves and intensified, which are going to intensify in different cities. We already get to see the heat waves, especially the heat waves in the Andhra Pradesh last year, and in the 2015 the heat waves in the central and the northern part of India has taken somewhere around 2,500 people life, right? Now, observed impacts are concentrated amongst the economically and socially marginal urban residents. Infrastructure including transportation, water, sanitation and energy systems have been compromised by extremely and slowly onset events, which resulting in economic losses, disruptions of several services and impacts on well-being. See this particular paragraph and the previous point, which tries to say that on an year by year there has been population moving from villages to the cities. The cities as a whole is experiencing so much pressure. The density of the cities has been increasing. When the density of the population is increasing, any change in the climates, take an example of Mumbai. If you take Mumbai as a city, if there is so much of flooding there, Chennai as a city, intense waves, intense heat waves in the months of October, in early Octobers, and post Octobers you get to see the monsoons and floods. Economy drops, people livelihood fails. When their livelihood fails, it is a gerrymandering effect that can take up their life, right? So overall it is a big threat that is yet to be blown off. Please make sure that these points are very much important for the examination point of view, especially for the general studies paper 3 preliminary examination. May wet bulb temperature and heat bulb temperatures can be asked, or else IPCC reports, especially about the IPCC body, does it make a research or does it not make a research, and what are the genesis as well as once the genesis is done, what are the working groups that are present in the IPCC, that is working group 1, 2 and 3. These 3 components along with the reports that is going to come, especially for the recommendatory nature. Reports in the month of April which is going to come is very much useful, because it gives so many solutions to the ongoing problems whatever which you see in terms of climate change, right? The last topic for today, that is your silk. There is a silk that is in news that is called Ahimsa silk. or it is also called as Tassar silk. So Hindu specifically mentioned about this silk. So in terms of environment, this is important. In India, you generally get 4 different types of silks. One is mulberry silk, which you can see here, eri, muga and Tassar silk. There is one silk in India which is only present in India, especially in Assam. Can you name it? Can you name it? There is one silk in India which is present only in India, nowhere else, and that too in Assam only. Can you name the silk? Let me wait for comments for 10 odd seconds. Kulvinder Singh asks how to get the PDF of this lectures. See, the PDF of this lectures will be available in the Telegram group. The link of the description for the Telegram is just below the video which you are watching. Please make sure you join in that Telegram group so that you get this PDF. We will be posting in just after the video itself, right? Okay. See, the image you see here, this is the silk which is in brown color. This ahimsa silk, which is made up of Tassar silk, is generally obtained from tribal people. Tribal people, with the help of the butterflies, they grow this kind of silk, and this is the silk map of India. In India, if you look into, mostly the southern part of India will have Malabar silk, or you can call it as mulberry silk. Production unit of mulberry silk is more in Karnataka, right? Next is your Tassar silk. This Tassar silk is present in the eastern part of India, that too in Bihar, Jharkhand and some parts of the Malda region, right? Chhattisgarh, Bihar and Jharkhand. This is your Tassar silk, right? And in the Himalayan belt, you can see some pink color, right? This pink color is nothing but your oak, O-A-K, oak Tassar silk. This is your oak Tassar silk. Now, there is one silk which is only present in India, that is your muga, especially in Assam. Assam, which is native, indigenous, it is found only in India, that is your muga silk, and some parts of muga silk you can see, some parts of muga silk you can see in Karnataka, which is not present in this map, right? This is your important point, right? They are only present in Assam. Antheria moth, you might have heard about. These kind of moths are responsible for the formations of particular silk, right? There are 4 types of silks, and these types of silks are your mulberry, eri, Tassar and muga, right? Ahimsa silk is obtained from Tassar silk. Ahimsa silk is the name of the silk which was in news, which is actually trying to get its GI tag, लेकिन अभी तक मिला नहीं है. Sooner or later it might get. So make sure a prelims point of view से important है, right? That's it for today's class. If you have liked this, please make sure you press a like button. We'll be coming up with more relevant articles and more important articles next week, that too on Wednesday. Every day, every Wednesday 2:30 we'll be taking up the lecture for geography, environment and science and technology. From the science and technology articles, vacuum bomb, which has already been covered by the Varun sir in yesterday's Hindu news article. That's the reason why I did not take it up. And if there is anything important with respect to the science and tech, we'll be posting it on the Telegram group as well, right? Thank you and take care. Please make sure to spread this word that this is one of the important series which we are going to cover up. Thank you guys.